What's up, everybody? Nostalgia Goggles 4-3 here on a Saturday night. Not a normal night for us, but it's not a normal weekend. It's All-Star Weekend in 2020, and therefore it is All-Star Weekend in 1996 as well. Get the East versus the West. Let's get to it. Ooh, right at the beginning. And there's some kind of electrical storm happening. That is unfortunate. Never can tell what my equipment's going to do. All-Star difficulty for an All-Star game. East versus West. Let's do it. Before we get started, 10% of anything I make tonight goes to the Retina Foundation of the Southwest. They're doing a lot of great research trying to cure macular degeneration, among other things. Macular degeneration is not a pleasant condition, and it'll be amazing if they can find a cure, and these guys are working toward it. So please support them directly, too, if you feel so led. There's a link in my Twitch profile. There's also a link in the YouTube comments. That's where you're watching it. Let's just get right to it. We'll play the East All-Stars, since we're the Raptors. This game does not dynamically put together an All-Star roster, so we have more or less the 1995 All-Star team presented here. We are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, it would seem. Fortunately, you can't see that beautiful logo on the court, but I have high hopes that the colors will stop acting like an Atari 2600 and start acting more like a Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Who do we got? I haven't even looked at these rosters yet. We got Penny Hardaway, Reggie Miller, that makes sense. We are Nostalgia Goggles 4-3. Grant Hill, Scottie Pippen, and Shaquille O'Neal. In the West, Dan Marley. He's actually on Cleveland, I think, this year. Latrell Sprewell. Sean Kemp. Karl Malone. And Hakeem or Robinson? Hakeem. There we go. Great group of talent out there on the floor. Let's see how we do with it. Who am I? All right, I'm Shaq. All right, this is an all-star game, so we are going to turn defensive pressure down to low because it wouldn't be an all-star game. Kept it on high, and we'll try switching the ball around so we can try out all these all-stars. See how it goes. I'm Shaq. Oh, we have the ball. Oh! Hakeem didn't get the memo. Hack a Shaq indeed. Well, it's working for him. Or is it? Yeah. Take that, the dream. Ooh. Marley kicking it off. Reggie Miller saying, I don't think so. Crowd, of course, thinks this is the Timberwolves. They must be confused. Marley trying again. Penny. Oh, Dan, the man. I didn't even touch the button. What is the deal? Reggie probably not too thrilled with that. Nice to have a game with the pressure off. Our most recent loss in the regular season was but this week, 2 games ago. So What's up, Spitz the Greatest? That's okay. You almost forgot. You're here now. Thanks for tuning in. Got Dan Marley's been lighting us up. Just been 3 points back and forth. Come on, Reggie, pop out. Ugh. Man. I say you don't recognize what's happening. Yeah, this is All-Star Weekend. So a different number 31 shooting our 3-point shots tonight. Karl Malone. Pull-up jumper. This seems a lot harder. Well, I mean, we do have the best players in the Western Conference opposing us. Penny Hardaway throwing it down. We also turned defensive pressure down to low because it's an all-star game. And immediately the first thing that happened when we had the ball was Hakeem Olajuwon fouled Shaq, which sounds about, whoa, right. Dang, that was definitely not the button I intended to press. How did none of your players make the All-Star game? Well, that's because this is a Super Nintendo game, and there is no dynamic All-Star team. This is the, more or less, the lineup that was in the All-Star game in 1995. Hakeem just does not want Shaq to score a basket. Yeah, so it's not a dynamic All-Star team. So we've got Penny Hardaway, Reggie Miller, Grant Hill, Scottie Pippen. Yeah, it's just a set roster, just another team. So then Dana Barros is our only backup point guard, so we'll go there. Joe Dumars, give a chance. Got to rotate it out a little bit. Not serious dearth of small forwards on the bench. Go Larry Johnson. And power forward. How about Vin Baker? Just lit up the Bucks last night. That is lame, I agree, but I also get it. I can't believe Olajuwon's playing Hack-a-Shaq in the All-Star game. The computer and the crowd don't seem to realize that this is an all-star game either. Oh, Joe, come on. That is even lamer. I don't actually even know who the three-point shooters are. I should probably check that. If any. So 3 points. Dana Barros and Joe Dumars, I guess. Either one. It's exactly why you never play the Pro Bowl in 2K5. Oh, really? Even by 2K5, they didn't have it. Outside of your guys, you don't know who anyone is. I see what you're saying. But as I was saying before you came on, it is kind of nice to have a game that doesn't matter. In a sense, especially coming off those losses. Big Shaq, where are you at? Over there. That's for you, Spitz the Greatest. Patronate our Buy a Bucket tier. Thank you for your support. Or did I say losses? I guess I was thinking of the Sonics one, too. But that was a while ago. Yeah, I was thinking specifically of the one last week. Barrows. Nice. No, the record's up there, 44-2. We good. All right, Ben. Let's not foul out in the All-Star game here. But Ewing, Zoe. Who hasn't gotten in? Tyrone Hill? I think he's the only one. He can get in later. Whoa, Patrick. It's nice to know it's not just my players. Hall of Fame centers do the same thing. Unless that was Alonzo. I'm not actually sure which one. Oh. Nice one, Barrows. Oh. Oh, dear. Nice. Joe Dumars. My man. So I think I've mentioned I was a big fan of the champion era Pistons back in the day. So I liked their defensive specialty. Joe Dumars always has a special place in my heart. Result. Number 2, I think that's Larry Johnson. That might be the first time we've led since it was 1-0. In traffic, Dumars. Nope. Can't convert. Also can't get the rebound. How's your Valentine's Day? What's the greatest? Good, quiet. Went out to dinner. Rest of the day was pretty busy. Yeah. Oh yes, interview. How did it go? I'll give Tyrone Hill a shot here. Hasn't been in yet. Tyrone Hill and Grant Hill. The 2 Hills. Well, whoever knows, ain't that the truth? The only time I ever walked out of a job interview saying, yeah, I got that, I nailed that, I didn't get it. Three points would be Dumars or bust. Feel like you did excellent. Well, that's all you can do. I certainly hope this interview was in my location so that we could make this a joint NBA Live NFL 2K stream in person. Woo! Shooting the lights out in Minneapolis. Whoa. It's so dark I can't even hit the rim. Nope. As I may have mentioned before, that is the reason I don't play the Genesis version of this game. Because it would just be that over and over and over. Interesting. All right. Sounds like I need to get cracking. Moving you this direction. So the Genesis version feels like the NHL games of the era. There is very little friction, and every single time I got a rebound, I jumped right out of bounds. Landed right at, like, basically that last play happened every time. Oh, Big Shaq. That one can be for Tim Troy, humanitarian, philanthropist, patron at our Buy a Bucket tier. Thank you for purchasing me that bucket. But anyway, the Genesis version is a lot more polished in a lot of ways, but the game physics, again, it just felt like you were on ice. Fewer face buttons, that it was a factor as well. There is no steal button on the Genesis version, which, as it turns out, did not end up all that integral to our strategy. But I thought it was going to be for the season, before I knew that you had to have a guy parked under the basket. Then again, the Genesis AI is also smarter, so to Penny Hardaway. But the player physics was the main downside. Play Genesis games really suffer on the 3-button controller. That is a true statement. That's the downside of being out before the competition, right? Same idea with the PS1 not having built-in analog sticks. Very nice. I'm actually not sure which Hill that was. They're both wearing number 35. Grant or Tyrone. Either way, nice work, sir. All right, Dumars. Hit that. Man, his field goal percentage is just taking a nosedive this quarter. Maybe he needs to sit. This was one of Dumars' final seasons before retirement. Well-deserved retirement. After an illustrious career. One-time NBA Finals MVP. Two-time NBA champion. 12-time awesome guy. Oh, goaltend! Man. Where's my goaltend? We need a line change here. Arrows, Miller, put Zoe in. Scotty. And Larry. Maximum Carnage. In that game, you can collect power-ups of other superheroes. You can use them to jump on screen and basically clear out all the enemy's damaged bosses. You can collect something like 6 different heroes. I feel like you're probably typing more, but wanted to catch people who can't see the chat up. The only way to cycle through them on the Genesis is to lightly tap the start button. So you can imagine it never works. It just ends up pausing the game, which leaves a lag when you come back. Inevitably, when the game unpauses, you're going to get hit. Yeah, that is not a good time. Very nice. Barrows. It's always interesting when clearly one platform was the lead platform. Although it's interesting in this case, because for most of the 16-bit era, EA games were lead platform on the Genesis. Even if you just look at how many were published, there were significantly more released for Sega's system. But these really feel like 2 different games. The SNES version and the Genesis version. I was thinking with the NBA Street Series, that's one that, you know, it was released on GameCube and Xbox, but it was very clearly designed for the PS2. If you don't have 4 shoulder buttons, and you try to do that, you're going to have a bad time doing the tricks. Even though the PS2 was the least powerful platform of the generation, there are still times it is the correct one, even if you have all of them available to you. Larry Johnson. Great ball movement by the West. Run that play exactly the way it's written. Dreamcast really suffered by not having 2 analog sticks. A silly mistake to make. I've always wondered about that. Do you have... So you know more about the Dreamcast than most people I know. Do you know why? Because you're right, it does seem like... I mean, when did the Dreamcast come out in Japan? It was like 99, right? 98. Okay, so I guess analog sticks were still a fairly new concept. When did the DualShock come out? Okay. Yeah, so basically it was the same mistake they made with the Genesis. At the time the Genesis came out, the competition all had 2 buttons, so 3 seemed like enough. Then Nintendo came out with 6, and the game changed. Similarly here, and 98, 1 analog stick probably was enough. But then when the DualShock happened, it's game over. Although only having 6 buttons total strikes me as odd as well. I mean, even the Saturn had 8. I guess maybe... Do not many Saturn games use all 8 buttons? I wonder if that was it. They figured they could just get away with 6 because of use cases from that generation and stick with. It wasn't crazy to only have 1 analog stick when you're designing the system, but as developers learned what they could do with 2 sticks, it really was a game changer in terms of design, that's for sure. Oh, not mean to. Dreamcast really fell awkwardly between generations in a lot of ways. Yeah. Timeout. Oh, come on. Nope. Yeah, when I think of the Dreamcast, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, like in terms of power level, like I think of it as a 5th gen system. Like I think of games like Tony Hawk that were multi-platform for the PS1. I mean, I know a lot of the exclusives did end up getting ported to the PS2, GameCube, whatnot, but even that is part of the 5th gen feel. Like they almost felt more like remasters. I mean, it is definitely 6th gen, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I mean, it's in terms of the game library, their game library almost fits the process. Who are the first players from the same NBA team to share the All-Star Game MVP award? Well, for you, Spitz the greatest, I'm going to say Larry Bird, Kevin McHale. Now, my MVPs, Tim Troy, humanitarian philanthropist, Spitz the greatest, Dr. Ambassador Dortmunder. Spitz the greatest, going with Jordan and Pippen. Go figure. And then tonight we're supporting the Retina Foundation of the Southwest. Check them out. Doing cool stuff. With an E. You spelled it right first time. All right, so we're going to stick with Penny. Just going to try starting out with the people who did better. Reggie and Joe seem to be doing exactly the same. So I'll go with Dumaris. Aforementioned Affinity. Pippen's been pretty quiet. With Grant Hill. Back to the Dreamcast. Controller is based heavily off the special analog controller Sega produced for the Saturn. Yeah, I've noticed that. Alright. This seems like the way to start. Though honestly, and here, this is where you and I are going to disagree, I think. I think the Saturn controller is overrated. I like the Genesis 6-button controller better. And there's a number of other things. I mean, people talk about it. Like, it's not a bad controller for 2D games, certainly. I mean, I like the 6 face buttons. But it's not. I'm talking about the standard controller, not the 3D one for the Saturn. The 3D one, train wreck. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, people talk about it like it's the greatest controller of all time for 2D games, and I just don't see it. At least we agree on the 3D controller. Definite train wreck. Oh, all right, you know, that is a great way to put it. Controllers are a pass-fail thing the Saturn passes. Beautiful, Penny. That bucket purchased for us by Dr. Ambassador Dortmunder, patron at our Buy a Bucket tier. Thank you for your support. The Duke for the original Xbox is a fail. Yeah. See, I've gotten picky about ergonomics ever since the accident. When I was, man, how old would I have been? I guess 22. I was in a car accident. Ended up totaling the car. I didn't think I had sustained any particular injuries, but starting about a month later, I had all this like RSI type symptoms. My doctor diagnosed carpal tunnel, although my doctor at the time was not particularly competent. So many years later, I had another doctor who was looking at the symptoms I just mentioned in passing. Yeah, I've got a carpal tunnel diagnosis. And he said, that doesn't seem like carpal tunnel to me. That seems like the ulnar nerve. Did you have any kind of trauma in that area? And I said it happened about a month after a car crash. He's like, yeah, that sounds consistent with that. So short of having surgery, there's not really anything I can do. But for a long time, it actually did really impede. I had to stop playing video games altogether when it first happened. I was wearing wrist braces for a couple of years. And most things have come back now. I can type fine without it, which is good because that's how I earn money. Certainly more money than I earn streaming. But I can play video games again. I still can't play guitar. It's something that I did before. Yeah, so all this to say, my pass-fail criterion are a lot more stringent. Push them out. Yes! That's what you get for hacking a shack. So at any rate, my pass-fail criteria are pretty strict. That's actually why I use the arcade stick, because I can't use the Dogbone SNES controller without pain at this point. It's hard for me to even remember ever being able to. Oh, come on. Just stop David Robinson. How hard is it? Woo! That was pretty penny. A pretty penny. SNES controller is overrated. I agree, and I'm going to get an even hotter take on it. SNES controller has ruined controller design in a way that continues to manifest itself to this very day. Shoulder buttons are a bad idea. You should have triggers on the back of the controller like the Steam controller does. Having them on the top of the controller is an ergonomic mess. It doesn't make any sense. You don't need to be able to see the buttons to know that they're there. Most people, after they first start gaming, aren't looking at the controller anyway. If I were designing a controller, it would have 6 face buttons, either 2 or 4 triggers on the back of the controller. Like underneath it. Counterpoint, you never knew the N64 had a Z button until you had played it dozens of times with friends because you couldn't see it. No, that's fair enough. Although that button was pretty small too. Like if you look at a Steam controller, it's pretty obvious that there are triggers back there. Because they're more like the triggers on an Xbox, a modern Xbox controller. Actually, I saw it. I guess that was a good point too. That was before the days you'd be looking for it. Nice penny. Yeah, all the original Xbox controllers fail for me. The Duke fails because it's just not. It's too big. But my problem with the S controller, the shape is fine, but the black and white buttons are not in the right spot. Oh yeah, clicking analog sticks is a fail. The traditional PlayStation controller design is a fail for me. I mean, that's basically an SNES controller with handles. So that shouldn't surprise you too much. PS4 passes barely, although when I had a PS4, I used a third-party pad that was laid out like an Xbox controller. That's interesting. The button. What do you mean the button layout? Like the way that the analog sticks are with the D-pad? Because at this point, the shoulder buttons and face buttons are the same as an Xbox controller. It's basically just the D-pad and the left analog that are different. There you go, Penny. We have found our lineup. Oh, the X button. Okay. Yeah, and that's just an American thing too. In Japan, as I understand it, in the menu screen, circle is confirm and X is back. It does drive me a little nuts that we have 3 major console developers and they all have an X button on their face, and all 3 of them are in different locations. So. Hey, we blocked a hook shot even. Oh, okay. In critical moments and timing matters, you always default to X's location as it does in the Xbox. On PlayStation, it's where A should be. Yeah, and on Nintendo systems, that the bottom button is B, and A is the right button. That's so wrong. Well, in Nintendo's defense, they did it first. The SNES, ABXY. And it's always been wrong. There you go. All right, Spitzagreus is saying Jordan and Pippen, saying Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, John Stockton, and Karl Malone. That makes sense. Those are 2 players I think of together, even more so than Jordan and Pippen. Certainly more so than Larry Bird and Kevin McHale. That was only somewhat of a real guess anyway. I continue to be flummoxed by like our best 3-point shooter tonight has been Penny Hardaway. We've got Joe Dumars, we've got Reggie Miller, we've got Dana Barros. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. Spitz the greatest. That's how. Oh, so the Shenmue 3 QuickTime events causing you troubles because you're used to it, thinking of it as a Dreamcast and Xbox game. Your brain is hardwired wrong. Oh, Penny. Easy. Oh, Shaq. No risky passes. Don't want to let him back in the game. And they're shooting really well from 3. So we need to step up our game. So ever since our Crazy Taxi conversation a few weeks ago, that's still been kind of going back and forth in my mind. When you had mentioned that Crazy Taxi is a game that sparks joy for you, and I've been taking the Marie Kondo approach to how I look at games. I've been trying to figure out what the games that bring me joy have in common. It reminded me when you were talking about the QuickTime events. And I think a lot of it is like some degree of flexibility in achieving the desired outcome. So think of a game like the early Tony Hawk games, for example. I mean, there were a few things that were prescribed. You got to drain the fountain, you got to collect the letters, etc. But there were also always things like score 200,000 points. And there's lots of ways to do that on all those levels. You can just go on the half pipe for 2 minutes and do that. You can put together a big grinding combo. You can look for gaps. Like, there's more than some combination of the above, and you just have to do that. And I was thinking I'm playing a basketball game, so one example would be like NBA 2K11's Jordan Challenge. How you had to recreate specific feats that Michael Jordan did, like making 8 3-point shots in a half against the Blazers in the 92 finals. Like, you could make 7 3-point shots and 100 2-point shots, and it wouldn't matter because you have to do that specific thing. But, I mean, that's an obvious example of what I'm not looking for, but I'm starting to think even things like platformers, which is a genre I've previously said I like, your Marios, your Sonics. Like, you're still basically, like, you start left, you get right. You have some degree of freedom in terms of how you're executing it, but not in terms of the main goal. Your main goal is prescribed for you. There is an optimal way to do it. Sure, you can set up other challenges for yourself. Deus Ex gives you all kinds of ways to play the game. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that about, like, the original Fallout games as well. 3 in the key. With the ball. You don't see that very often. So... But I'm not sure those are really my genre either. I mean, so that's a piece of it. Yeah, thinking of, like, the games that immediately come to mind for me that sparked, like, the top 3 were Tony Hawk 2, Dynasty Warriors, which we talked about at the time, and then NBA Street Volume 2, the single-player mode in that. Because that game basically is an RPG, except the combat is basketball instead of combat. And at the risk of stating the obvious, I enjoy basketball in video games and otherwise, so that was something that appealed to me. But, like, you're going through, like, you create a player and then you've got, like, a party that's with you, and every time you win a game you have the option of either taking somebody from that, you either get more skill points for your own player, or you can take someone from the team you just defeated and they join your party. That just happened, indeed. Indeed it did. Yeah, I was trying to think of what those the rim stuff to me. With an all-star team. Yeah, I was trying to think of what those games have in common, like, conceptually, to help me figure out, like, what games I'm looking for. And that's it. And that, I think, even in the competitive multiplayer games that I've enjoyed playing, like, that's part of what I like about fighting games too. Like, there's not one optimal path through it. Whereas, like, I tend to get bored with, say, racing games, unless it's something like some of the better Mario Karts or like a Wipeout sort of thing, where there's some sort of catch-up mechanism where you have to improvise a little bit, because otherwise it's track memorization. You're confused by what I like. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to articulate. Like, I guess what I'm looking for is there does not exist an optimal path to achieving the goal that the game has put out for you. Yeah, so it's better to, like, define it negatively. So, like, racing games are not it, because there is an optimal path through the track, and how you do is determined by how closely you come to achieving the optimal path, essentially. One of the few exceptions, another game I didn't mention that does bring me joy when I play by myself is Burnout 3. Particularly Burnout 3, although the series to a lesser extent. And that's because your goal is not generally to win the races, or at least it's not to win the races with the best time. Like a lot of times your goal is to take down opposing cars, and there's lots of ways to do that, and lots of points on the track when you can do that. So, memorizing still helps, but it's not like, it's not the only thing, and it's not the same every time. Or even something like Tetris, the blocks that come out are random, so there's not like an optimal layout. What is going on, guys? Why are you fouling so much? And using the NBA Street Volume 2 example, when you're within a game, there's lots of ways to win that game. You can just do a lot of outside shooting. You can do a lot of tricks to build up your meter with fancy dribbling. You can ignore all of that and just have big men. There's no goaltending in that game, so you can just have them park under the basket and swat everything away and just grind it out 2 points at a time if you want. And then between the games, too, it's not always clear-cut. Like, do you want to take one of these players who you'll never see again if you don't, to add to them to your team, or do you want to make yourself better? You can't do both things, so it's a difficult decision, and neither of them are wrong. Just like it's not wrong to go for a high score in Tony Hawk by grinding a huge rail instead of hanging out in the half pipe all day. I guess I just want that flexibility. Penny Hardaway, 44 points. All-Star Game MVP. There we go. I don't even need to look at all the stats because I won't need to reference them later. What do you want to see? Do you want to see any particular stats? You want to look at the shot summary? You tell me. They weren't even paying attention. You were all about the early chat. Yeah, that game kind of moved away from us. Do a quick quarter by quarter, because I suspect it's going to be interesting. Yep. 88% in the third quarter. That's what you missed. We're good. Save that game. What do you think? You up for one more? Game did get out of control. All right, let's do it. Pull up a couple of lineup stuff.